estimates say that as many as 3/4 of all analytic projects that businesses undertake fail to return any value to the company. That's a pretty dismal stat. While the actual failure rate can probably never be known, it's true that there are an infinite number of ways for an analytic project to go off the rails. I've learned, though, that every successful business analysis project must meet 10 criteria to help companies actually improve the quality of their decisions. And that's one way that we can measure the value of analytics. This list is by no means going to cover everything that you must do, but without any one of these traits, it's unlikely that your project is going to be impactful. And to be clear, when I say analysis, I mean anything from a Tableau dashboard, a written report, a presentation with some data, even a weekly email to the CEO that contains a chart. Anything that is synthesizing data to try to provide better foundations for decisions is an analysis. So what are the 10 traits? First, the analysis must be informative. By this, I mean it must add useful information that increases our understanding of the situation. I once saw a grinder of rock salt that said non-GMO. Strictly speaking, that is a true fact, but it doesn't help me at all because no salt could ever be genetically modified since it doesn't have any genetic material to start with. So this true fact didn't actually provide me with any useful information that I could use to make a decision about what salt to choose. The fact was true, but it was true about all salt and therefore of zero informational value. All right, second, the analysis must not just increase your general understanding, but it must be relevant to the project's specific goal. Example, a few months ago, I was at my annual wellness checkup and the nurse practitioner wanted to do some blood work on me since I'd recently come off a medication. This blood test would have provided us with new information about hormones and other levels in my blood, so it would have been informative. But my personal goal wasn't to have the numbers in my blood work be a certain value. Rather, it was to make sure that I didn't have any symptoms and to be healthy. So for my goal, while blood work would have been informative, it didn't actually apply to my goal. If I felt healthy and had no symptoms, then I wasn't going to take action or go back to any medication based on the values of that blood work checkup. Body mass index is another often used number that might not pertain to your goals. Think about if you're entering a bodybuilding contest. Body mass index would give us information. It tells us where you sit on the index, but it may not give us any information about your actual goal. And next, once you have got that useful information that actually aligns with your goal, it needs to be information that you can take action on. Let's think about living in the house on a beach. You get an emergency announcement that there's a tropical storm coming. That's informative and relevant to your goal of staying alive. But the announcement doesn't include what direction the storm is moving. Now you can't take action on that information because you don't know which way to go. You should leave probably, but you don't know where the storm's going to hit and you don't know which way to go would be safe. Informative, relevant analytics that aren't directionally actionable still have their place, say in an environmental scan or annual report, but they can't by themselves generate much value until they are translated into a direct action that can be taken. Now let's imagine that storm warning came 1 week after the storm had already hit. It wouldn't be any use then. That's why trait number 4 is timeliness. The end users of the analysis need to receive it when they can still take action to change the outcome. The other aspect of timeliness is that the data need to be recent enough that the reality hasn't changed by the time the analysis is shared. That enough time period can vary dramatically based on what kind of data you're using. It could be anything from minutes if you're in an emergency room to a year for studying population changes. All right, so even if you've already got your analysis done and it's on time, it's still dead in the water if the people who are actually making decisions or taking actions can't get to it. So trait 5 is accessibility. Analytics are often inaccessible if they are locked away in systems or databases that end users aren't, for example, authorized to access. Or they can be inaccessible because they are in forms or softwares that the end users just don't know how to actually use. Access isn't just about building it and hoping that the right people will come. It means making sure that analytics are easy to use and available at the point of decision making. Embedding critical analytics at the point of the decision or action is probably the best way to ensure accessibility. Once your key users can access your informative, relevant, actionable, and timely analytics, they still have to interpret it. Interpretation is trait 6, and it is both a property of the analytics itself, as well as a matter of appropriate training for the users. Misleading color schemes and charts, poorly labeled tables, and missing data dictionaries can all make an analysis difficult or even impossible to interpret properly. So can a lack of fundamental data literacy in the users it's meant for. Next, trait 8 is trusted. Even if users can understand the analytics, it will all be for nothing if they don't trust it. Trust is in part influenced by the actual value and quality of the data itself. Mistakes or sloppy work will undermine trust. But it's also dependent on human factors. Analyses that have buy-in from all the stakeholders throughout the entire development process are much more likely to be trusted than that same analytic is if it's developed behind closed doors. If you've gotten all the way here and done it right, trait 9 is probably going to happen on its own, but it's not guaranteed. See, the analytic product must actually be used to make a difference. Typically, valuable, trusted data products are used, but breakdowns can happen. For example, if the end user isn't given the appropriate authority, or if outside pressures dissuade him or her from acting. Consider a public service announcement against youth smoking, for example. Even if a teenager received and believed the messaging, peer pressure might still lead him to smoke. So, you would be forgiven if you are thinking there can't possibly be a 10th trait. If we have an informative, relevant, actionable, timely, accessible, interpretable, trusted, utilized analysis, how could it not already be perfect? How could there be anything left? Well, here it is, the last trait of a valuable analytic product. Are you better off having used it than you would have been without it? Let's consider an algorithm that predicts sales deals and whether or not they will succeed. Even if this algorithm was a good model and did a decent job predicting which potential clients to pursue, and even if your entire sales team used it, it won't add any value to the business if it wasn't better than what the sales team could have done on their own. After all, they weren't just flipping coins and randomly picking deals to pursue. They had their own intuitions and ways of determining who would be worthwhile to invest time in and who wouldn't. So it doesn't actually matter how accurate the model is. It has to be better than the existing process or system in order to provide any value. Now, knowing if you've achieved this 10th trait does require defining and tracking measures for successful outcomes, but that is an entirely separate topic. So, there you are, the 10 critical elements for successful and valuable analytics.